experience Week 11 positional rankings debate. Joining me as he always does is Jake Ciely from RotoExperts.com, from the Fantasy Sports Network and Fantasy Radio. But I do want to apologize to everyone. I was not able to do a show Monday. I was not able to release a waiver column on Sunday night. It's the first time in 6.5 years I've missed a column, which is very disappointing to me. I pride myself on always having content out, but I've never gotten that sick during football season before, so it was either cancel those two things, get some rest for a day, or potentially be out the entire week. I decided to pull shoot on Monday, and, people missed Andrew Cuss, but whatever, he'll be back on Thursday. You'll be good to go, and Jake has a waiver wire piece up on RotoExperts.com right now anyway, and I'm probably sure it says something to the effect of pick up Jamal Williams.
Yeah, pretty much starts the running back portion with that. Hey, look, it was your bye week, or a bye day. Everybody needs one.
It was bad. Like, I caught up on most of the games, because usually I try to watch everything at once, then watch the late set, and then kind of try to process everything as the Sunday Nighter happens as I'm watching that, and then I'll go review on Monday. But, I kept falling asleep during the games. I had to spend all Monday just catching back up on basically what I had missed. I wasn't out at the normal place that I watch games. I had to go to Rewind and go check out all the games and watch them, speed mode to see what happened, see if I had missed anything. So it was a good day to catch up, but, I didn't have time to really write the stuff. And this stuff is sort of self-explanatory, waiver wire-wise, at least at this point. But let's start with the running backs, and first of all, you have to do your daily or your weekly thing of ranking Mark Ingram, because I'm not doing it. I don't care how many goddamn touchdowns he scores. He's going to remain in worst place. But for you, he actually has a ranking. So where's he land in the Week 11 running back rankings?
Well, if we're going by the track record of the past 2 weeks, so 2 weeks ago, he was inside the top 7 or so, and he finished at RB 15, which is never bad if you're going to RB 15 as your floor. But then last week we had him as a fringe RB 1, and we saw what happened. So I originally put him at number 5, but maybe that means he's going to finish 12 this week. We got to keep going back and forth. But that, to your point, that's why he's frustrating. At least at this point of the season, with what everything's going on, he has that terrific floor of being an RB2 now.
Well, frankly, when you start looking at the running backs and even look through it this week, running back's not good at all. I keep winning weeks based solely off the strength of my receivers, and they're not even they're good receivers. I made a surge in my home league, my 14-team keeper league, and my receivers are Golden Tate, Robbie Anderson, and Devin Funches.
Wow. That
is an awesome receiving core right now.
That is. Look, Devin Funches is probably the worst of the three of them. Robbie Anderson's been on a terrific touchdown streak. You got 2 of them on a bye. You're going to be suffering this week.
Yeah, so I can either play Doxson or Terrell Pryor. I have Danny Amendola. It's going to be a rough week for me. And my running backs suck, but again, everyone's running.
Let's go back to what you just said and just talk about, because I like to compare trades. People are just oh, this trade should never happen. And that's actually a perfect example, because who thought week 11 you'd be saying, I want nothing to do with Terrell Pryor and Danny Amendola. I can't believe I have to start him because I have the 2 guys I want to start on a bye, being Robbie Anderson and Devin Funches.
Well, we'll get into it when we get to receivers. Doxson, I would much prefer to play over Terrell Pryor, because Pryor's not even playing snaps at this point. But Doxson might get Lattimore, and that is going to be really tough.
That's not good at all. Yeah, we will get into that.
Yeah, that's why I have Crowder ranked above him this week, which I may have to play Doxson anyway, but that's where we're going to go. So you have Mark Ingram at number 5 this week. That trails Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley. I ranked Alvin Kamara at number 3 because I like Alvin Kamara. Kareem Hunt at number 4, Ingram, Shady, Fournette, Melvin Gordon, Jerick McKinnon, and Chris Thompson. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the injuries and potential pickup guys, or do you want to talk about Melvin Gordon for a second?
That's kind of bold, so let's start with him.
All right, so Melvin Gordon still wildly outsnapped Austin Eckler on Sunday. Eckler was used in the receiving game. He scored the touchdowns. That was all nice. Do you think that was a 1-week blip, or is this more of a split that we're going to see moving forward?
Well, that degree is absolutely a 1-week blip on the radar. Not a question there. But the problem here is the Melvin Gordon situation is I still don't think he's 100%, and it doesn't look like he's 100%. It's apparently a toe issue with a few other nagging injuries, but a toe issue when it comes to players, especially running backs, we see this ruin seasons. And obviously he can play through it and still be effective because apparently it's been bothering him for a few weeks now. But you're going to get some games where it might flare up more than other weeks. It's the turf toe syndrome or whatever they want to call it these days. So that's my biggest concern. And it's not so much going like the recency bias of, oh my God, look at what Eckler did. And I put this out there in the waiver column too. And I just want to remind everybody, this is coming from somebody who's been on Austin Eckler the entire season. So I am a fan of his, but let's be realistic about the talent of the two. Melvin Gordon is still the superior talent. Eckler, at least with that game, made it noted that, hey, I deserve a little bit more work in the passing game. So I could see maybe him getting 30-35% of the workload, where in previous weeks it was down in the 15% range. That's my only concern here. It's like Melvin Gordon's still an RB1 because if he gets his workload, he's going to be an RB1. But now Eckler kind of creeps into that RB3, PPR only, maybe if you're kind of hurting at running back.
See, I ranked Eckler at 43 this week, and for reference,
that's a fair spot.
That's behind guys who are in very similar situations like Gio Bernard, who I'm more convinced is going to get that actual snap. Now, the Chargers run way more plays than the Bengals, but still, I think that Gio Bernard has more of a role in that sense. It's behind Latavius Murray, who I still think has touchdown upside. I know Eckler scored the touchdowns, but I think that Murray is more likely to get a goal line touch if it ever comes down to that. Derrick Henry, even Terron Ward in a bad matchup. I just like how much he was used with Atlanta when Freeman went out.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of reports saying that if Freeman ever missed time before that game, they were saying, hey, Terron Ward could be the lead. I don't think that's true, but I do think it's going to be a bigger timeshare than people are expecting for Tevin Coleman.
Well, that's not good news because I have Tevin Coleman ranked at number 13. Should I move him down?
No, I honestly, especially because in the passing game, Tevin Coleman's still going to see a significant amount of the work. And the fact is we can keep complaining about the fact that his touchdowns just don't make sense, especially because he scores so many from outside the 5-yard line. But at some point, it's like Tyreek Hill last year. We can keep saying it doesn't make sense, but at some point, it's just like, suck it up, deal with it. It's what it is and what it is. And, I'm looking at the rest of the rankings here, and where are you going to move him behind? Like, I love, we talked about him last week. I love Kenyon Drake, but I can't bank on those kind of, or basically that yards that he got over, 9 carries, and they kept going to Damian Williams. Adam Gase is an idiot, and I can't force his hand. So I would definitely go Coleman over him. Adrian Peterson, I think, could definitely bounce back in this week with more time off one, and then this being a game flow where maybe he gets more of it, they're in competition for the entire game. But still, how far are you going to move him? I wouldn't even move him, honestly.
All right, well, when you talked about the Miami situation, Williams outsnapped Drake in the Monday Nighter, which I thought was somewhat surprising. Obviously, Drake broke off the big one and got all the fantasy points. Damian Williams didn't. So based on skill set and the fact that they're going to get around the same number of touches, I've come around to your way of thinking Drake's probably the better ad, probably the better play, but you can probably still play both of them. I think that they'll both do enough in the receiving game, although that didn't really translate Monday night. In a more competitive game, they might do more checkdowns like we saw 2 weeks ago as opposed to last week.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing is they insist on using Damian Williams. This kind of goes to the Jets situation where it's like, oh, let's go Bilal Powell. And then they kept insisting on using Matt Forte when he's healthy. And then last week, Bilal Powell, and they insisted on using Elijah McGuire. Like, we can clamor for what we want, but we can't force teams to do what they want to do. So they're going to go out there and use the guys they want to use. And Damian Williams, as you just said, bigger snap count, more rushes, that's the insane part of it. That's the biggest part that I don't get, is that at least with the timeshare, you expect it to be, hey, Damian Williams passing game, Kenyon Drake between the tackles, and they just were using Damian Williams for both.
They were using Damian Williams for both, but then when they got into catch-up mode, like late, not even catch-up mode, like garbage time mode late, it was then Kenyon Drake on the field. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, this seems counterintuitive to how these guys should be used.
100%, but again, what can we do?
Nothing. We can complain about it and try to project it out as best as possible.
Yeah, we definitely can. And at this point, Kenyon Drake actually might even be a little bit high.
Yeah, but there's no one good this week, so we'll deal with that when we get down into that part of the rankings. But in terms of injuries, the guys that I'm ranking and not ranking right now, you can check it out up on DKPlaybook.com. Generally, if I have someone listed as questionable, that means that they are in the rankings. If they are listed as doubtful, which I know isn't really... I'm projecting doubtful onto people here. So if they're listed as doubtful in my rankings, that means they are unranked as if they are not playing. And
they kind of got rid of that this year, it feels like. Doubtful's not really used much anymore. It's now like 10 degrees of questionable.
Yeah, well, there's like good questionable and bad questionable. So if I feel like you fall into the bad questionable, you get put in doubtful in my column. Like, I think how it works on the actual injury report is that if you're listed as doubtful, you have like a 90% chance of not playing. So basically, you're out if you're listed as doubtful.
Okay, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
But, I mean, guys like Jordan Reed are questionable every week, but you know they're not going to play.
Yeah, that's the bad question. Well, yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, this is why I do the show on Friday. I wait till all the injuries come out. Generally, if you don't practice on Friday, you're not playing on Sunday. That's the general rule of thumb. There are some veteran guys who can get away with it. Delaney Walker is always sort of the example. Antonio Gates used to be like this a lot. It's weird. It's a lot of old tight ends, but damn, they give these guys rest days.
Roddy White. I want the days of Roddy White saying, "Hey, don't play me this week." We need to bring him back.
I mean, at least Garrett Selleck came through for us this week when he was just like, "Listen, I know I had a lot of fantasy owners who were relying on me, so I had to get a touchdown."
That was terrific. Well, although I think it had a little bit to do with Janoris Jenkins kind of just doing the oopsie daisy as he went by.
Yeah, just, no worries about that. So the one running back that I actually have listed as questionable in the rankings right now, but I do have him as more of a diminished role, or else he'd be higher, is Danny Woodhead with the hamstring. Still no word yet on if he's going to play or not, but if I'm projecting him to play right now, it means I have Buck Allen bumped way down. I actually have Alex Collins still relatively high in comparison. I have Danny Woodhead at 35, Alex Collins at 36, and then I have Buck Allen down there. If we get more definitive news on either one of these guys, and that Woodhead's going to come back to his role and basically be the Buck Allen role with a few carries mixed in between and a few red zone appearances, he could go up a little bit, or if his timeshare is going to be knocked down a little bit, Buck will go up. Maybe Alex Collins goes up a little bit as well. But that's really a contentious situation. Do you have any read on that one?
No, I'm kind of with you on this one. I actually like the matchup a lot. We know the Packers really aren't stopping anybody, and at this point, I lean more towards, even a PPR, I lean more towards Alex Collins because the Packers offense really can't do anything, and if the Packers offense can't do anything, you don't need the Ravens to be aggressive. They could just ride Alex Collins and the rest of the running backs, but that might actually include Danny Woodhead. I got to tell you, Danny Woodhead would be hard for me to bench if he practices on Friday and really kind of looks good while he's out there, because now he's at least in the RB3, if not the RB2 conversation. Because, look, what was it? Like, he has 8 fantasy points and only had 7 touches so far this season. I think Mike Clay tweeted that out. So it's all about the upside with Woodhead. But I'm with you. If Woodhead is completely out, I think Buck Allen, for one more week, has that intriguing play. As I would put him lower than Alex Collins still, because this kind of goes back to the Miami situation, is for most of the year, the Ravens have been doing the opposite of what we'd expect. It's like when they're up, it's like, oh, we'll go to Buck Allen. We'll even use him inside the 5-yard line. When we're down, all of a sudden Alex Collins comes in. It's like the exact opposite of what you should do.
So the guys that I have listed as doubtful for this week, I don't have Devonta Freeman with a concussion, Eddie Lacy, CJ Proscites, Terrence West, or Ty Montgomery in the rankings. Ty Montgomery suffering from a rib injury. He could still play on Sunday. That's still in the mix. I don't think that's going to happen, but they're not ruling him out. Guys that are ruled out, Aaron Jones. Zeke is still on suspension. Lord knows if that's going to hold. David Johnson's out. He got the cast off his wrist, though, so there's a potential for a David Johnson return. If Arizona sneaks back into it. I wouldn't really count on that, and it kind of depends on how they fare over the next few weeks. But, listed them anyway. Rob Kelly not playing with a high ankle sprain and a knee injury, and Jeremy Hill is out for the year with an ankle injury. So let's talk about this Green Bay situation for a second. That leaves Jamal Williams as kind of like the solo guy. The problem with Jamal Williams is, I know you were big on him coming into the year, and I was kind of big on him too, but he hasn't looked very good.
No, actually, when I gave him the term in my waiver column was Trent Richardsonitis.
That's rough.
No, that's not good. You want a cure for that as quickly as possible, if possible. So, look, the fact is, I'm going to say the same thing I said in the preseason, actually after the draft and before the draft. Has the Madden button moves, can make all the moves. He can run between the tackles. He's a good pass blocker, good pass catcher. Obviously not on the level of Ty Montgomery pass catching, but he can do everything. And that's why I thought he could be a workhorse running back. I never thought Ty Montgomery was going to completely go away, but that's why I thought he could take the lead, mostly because Ty Montgomery struggles between the tackles and with pass blocking. All that being said, the one thing I mentioned then, and that's why I called it Trent Richardsonitis, is the vision is still not that good. And as you've seen so far, with what you say, he hasn't been very inspiring. He's running to the back of his offensive lineman, and that's why he's got 3 yards per carry. Hopefully that fixes, he can fix that, because that's on him. If it doesn't, I think we're just looking at, put it this way, going forward, I would consider him RB2. He can't be in the RB1 conversation, even being the only guy back there for 2 reasons. For one, he's running to the offensive lineman, and 2, this offense has just been decimated with Brett Hundley at quarterback.
Yeah, and the offensive line is down, too. I actually have Jamal Williams ranked at number 25, and that's assuming both Ty Montgomery and Jones are both out. I don't like the matchup against the Ravens at all. I think that you might get the volume of a potential RB1, but the matchup in talent and in this offense, that makes him number 25 in my books. Then you have Devontae Mays, who might come in and spell him, or if Williams looks terrible, maybe he loses the spot. I think there's enough volume to, I don't want to say trust him, but definitely enough to play him this week if those two guys are out.
Until Ripkowski steals a goal line carry, too.
Oh, I can't wait for Randall Cobb ends up getting used in the backfield.
Yeah. Oh, you know that's coming at least 2 or 3 times.
Well, there's enough crappiness around the situation that I would not feel good ranking him highly at all.
No, you can't.
Okay, so Ezekiel Elliott out. I was big on Darren McFadden. Turns out that was just the wrong move. So real crappy bench space on a lot of my teams. That was just wasted for picking up someone better. And then Alfred Morris becomes the hot pickup, but he also does nothing. Rod Smith plays the most snaps. Now they're trailing most of that game. And I actually thought that would actually work out well for McFadden because, hey, he's a good pass catcher. He's a good pass blocker. Apparently why is he still on the roster then? I guess is my question.
I don't understand it either. Like I flipped the switch before you did. I was with you along the line until all the news and all the reports. You couldn't ignore him and saying it's going to be Alfred Morris. It's going to be Alfred Morris. Rod Smith is number 2. Forget about Darren McFadden. At this point, it's still with you logically doesn't make sense. Like if you watch that game too, Rod Smith had more snaps and more touches because they were behind, and he still what do you have like 34, 39 yards somewhere in there that range. Even with those touches, it just wasn't that impressive. It might even been less than that. I don't know what it was. It just wasn't impressive as a whole. I mean, he had little flashes here and there, but to your point is if Darren McFadden really has nothing left to give, what's the point? And that's where I agree with you. And to be honest, I still don't think he's completely dead yet. You have to drop him for a lot of these names on the waiver wire that we're looking at right now. But if you're in a 14-team league or you just have no one to drop at this point or no one to pick up at this point, I'm not just going to cut him for the sake of cutting him because it wouldn't surprise me if he gets a few touches and then all of a sudden he's back in the mix.
So last week, Rod Smith played 38 snaps. Alfred Morris played 22, and DMC played alone 1 snap. At least he saw the field. That's really nice. Really, really nice of them to throw him a bone on that one. But in this matchup against Philly, in a game where they're expected to be trailing, I think that Rod Smith is probably the best option this week if you had to go with it, but it's almost along the same lines where I'm not overly confident in any of these guys. So I have Rod Smith ranked at number 32, Morris ranked at 38, and then McFadden's like down near the bottom. But just because that's the way we have to project it out at this point. But with Rod Smith, I think that he has enough reception upside. I guess the touchdown upside would still go to Morris because theoretically they would use him near the goal line, but I think Dak Prescott might just be their goal line back.
He looks like it so far. It definitely wouldn't surprise us. Similar to the Redskins situation, Kirk Cousins is tied for the team lead in touchdowns with Rob Kelly. Might even surpass him because Rob Kelly, as you mentioned, is now out forever. Dak Prescott is similar. Look, Cam Newton, same situation. It's these kind of guys is when you have a mess at running back and nothing's really appealing, you might just be the quarterback might be the best option. So I'm with you in a PPR and trying to predict game script, and that's what we're going to do going forward with the Cowboys. In a week like this, it'll be Rod Smith when they're facing a team where they're favored or should be in control, like the Giants or the 49ers or something like that. I don't know if they play the 49ers, just teams off the top of my head.
They did play the 49ers. They've already beaten the 49ers.
Okay, so they still have the Giants one more time, but I don't know who else. Anyway, anytime they're supposed to win, you would go with Alfred Morris. And right now, this week, that's the right thing to do is to project Rod Smith. But to keep him that low where you have him, like he's not guaranteed starter.
No, and I like the point you made about McFadden. In deeper leagues, like I'm going to give him another week to see if he can work his way back into the mix, and then I'll cut my losses and just call myself a moron. And because I still have one more week to be like, let's see, I told you, Darren McFadden, and then hopefully that happens. I mean, I look like a moron enough anyway. Just another thing to throw on the pile. It's not really going to kill me, but if something turns out my way, it could be very beneficial.
Absolutely, and it's always fun to say I told you so.
The Adrian Peterson thing you mentioned earlier with the Rod Smith, hey, let's try to project game flow, it's become very clear that if the Cardinals are favorites in a game, play Adrian Peterson. They ain't favorites, do not play Adrian Peterson. We talked about this last week. I think I had Peterson ranked at like 27, and I felt even uncomfortable with that, but he could have like that Rob Kelly game where he has 14 carries for 18 yards, somehow ends up with 2 touchdowns because he's still going to be their goal line guy. Then all of a sudden, Ellington plays more snaps and gets a goal line carry along the way anyway. Do we even know who's starting at quarterback for the Cardinals this week? Because it looks like it might be Blaine Gabbert.
It's leaning that way, I think. As they said, Drew Stanton could potentially miss a couple weeks, and all of a sudden they have some optimism today, as of being Tuesday, where he might play this week. I still think it's going to be Blaine Gabbert. To be honest, I don't really think there's much of a change at the running back position. We'll talk about when we get to the wide receivers. That's where I think the effect is felt. I don't think it has anything. I don't think there's going to be any effect running back wise.
But I guess the big thing right now, like I was trying to use Vegas spreads to help dictate where this ranking goes. That game's off the board because no one really knows who's playing quarterback. And if it was Stanton, I'm sure it really wouldn't be all that change in terms of like betting line. But there is none. So do you think that? Do you think that the Cardinals? Do the Cardinals beat the Texans? Should they be favored at home here?
No, I'd probably say the Texans would probably be like 2 or 3 for me.
So does that mean Ellington's a better play?
No, because all they're getting is the home field advantage. It's an even toss-up. The one good thing about last week's game is you're 100% right about the Adrian Peterson call. You actually underestimated the carries, but were pretty close on the yards, and that's the one good thing that I will take out of the last week's game is despite the fact that they were down, despite the fact he did nothing with his touches, he still had over 20 carries. They kept going to him. So that's the one positive you can take away from that.
I have Leonard Fournette at number 7, and it was discouraging to me to see that during the final drive of the game when the Jags needed to come back, and eventually they did. TJ Yeldon was on the field, and Leonard Fournette was not. And all of a sudden, Leonard Fournette didn't break a 50-yard touchdown. It turns out he did nothing in that game. I'm still confident that the volume is going to be there for Leonard Fournette. He still played way more snaps than everyone else. He's going to get his touches. But do you worry that he's not an elite fantasy back? He's more of a Jordan Howard type guy?
No, I don't worry about his eliteness at all, honestly, because he is. It's the talent's not a question. It's the ankle and the foot. And this is the same issues he's been dealing with in college. Granted, it's a different foot, but it's just one of those things where he's somebody who has injuries, and their injuries at the worst spot you could pick for a running back is the ankle-foot range. And he's also a slow healer. So you look at last year, sapped his entire production at LSU. It's part of the reason people had concerns. Obviously, it didn't affect his draft stock. Good for him. But the fact is, this is what we dealt with LSU, and now we're dealing with it with the Jaguars. And if he's not 100% similar to Melvin Gordon, and you have Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon who have shown their ability this year, they don't need to necessarily go to him. It's nice, but I think that I think put it this way. His eliteness has been sapped by the ankle, and now he's similar, I would say similar field to Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon with the injury.
Patriots running backs, I have James White at 22, Rex Burkhead at 23, and Dion Lewis at 31. If Chris Hogan plays, should I bump down Rex Burkhead?
I think you have to. I think that's the bigger thing. I think you're looking at the backfield. I'm not screwing around with it. I never will, and I never have.
James White has been a good PPR play almost every week.
That is true, and I was just about to get to this. Like the one trustworthy one this year up until last week was James White, and I know, well, the score last week was trustworthiness, but if he didn't get that touchdown, 1.5 fantasy points. You're going to get excited about that? Absolutely not. And that's the problem here is that all of a sudden he got left out, and the touchdown saved his day. It's just this is what we deal with the Patriots. Anybody could be left out any given week, and not all 3 of them are going to be productive every single week. Dion Lewis is basically the lead runner with no value in the passing game. James White is the passing game with really no value as a lead runner. And then you have Burkhead, who's kind of in between. And I think his in-betweenness, though, is affected by the availability of Chris Hogan. I would move him down. If not, I don't want to put any of these guys in my lineup. But in a PPR, if I still had to pick one, it would be James White. Although, again, those touches last week were very concerning.
With no Rob Kelly around, I have Chris Thompson at number 10 in the rankings, and I have Samaje Perine at 37. Is the gap between those guys too large, or should I mean, I'm making the stand that I really like Chris Thompson here, and I just think that he's going to do more. And basically with Perine, you're banking on a touchdown, and that just frankly might not come.
100%. No, I think that gap is perfect. I wouldn't close it at all. It might even be wider because this is a game against the Saints. They're probably going to have to keep up to a degree, although the Saints aren't like a 40-plus points every single week anymore with the way the defense is playing. But if you took a game where they need to score, Chris Thompson is the one I want. I think Chris Thompson is an RB1 this week. And if you talk about it, yeah, Perine runs between the tackles, not a very good pass catcher. You're hoping for a touchdown. If he only gets 30 yards and no touchdown, you got the points right there because it's probably only going to be 3 because he's not likely to catch anything.
Seahawks running backs. Do you want to start any of them? I would start Rawls, I guess, but McKissick with Procytes expected to be out and Lacey expected to be out, that maybe he can return some PPR value.
That's actually, in a PPR, I just wrote him up as a sleeper from the rankings tonight at midnight, and I have McKissick as a sleeper, especially in PPR, because if you look at the Atlanta Falcons still this year, they are still struggling to stop pass-catching running backs. And as of right now, assuming Lacy and CJ Prosise is out. By the way, CJ Prosise couldn't even make it through one damn game. If you look at the effectiveness last week, McKissick still has the bigger burst. Rawls is still unimpressive. If we're talking PPR, I'd actually rather, as you always do, and I agree with you a lot, is if you're going to have a situation like this, give me the guy with more upside.
I guess, yes, he has the upside, but he would need to break one to score. And I know the Seahawks don't run it all that much down near the goal line, but I would still figure it would be Rawls who would do it.
It might be, but what is he going to get? 20 yards if he doesn't get the touchdown? Similar to Pirine.
Yeah, I guess the basement is so bad for Rawls, but yeah, it is very similar to Pirine. Like I have Rawls at 28, I have Pirine at 37. I would still project more touches for Rawls, if anything, even if they're kind of useless touches. Maybe he gets a chance to break one. Who knows? I would still prefer Rawls to Pirine. I would play Rawls over McKissick this week, although I could see it not working out in my favor.
Absolutely, and I'll definitely go Rawls over Pirine.
Any other running backs we didn't talk about here that you think we should bring up?
What are you doing with Isaiah Crowell at this point?
I put him at 27. Like, I don't even know what to do with that guy.
The last two games, it looks like it's turning around, but any given game, I mean, Duke Johnson was still used a ton in that game against the Lions. Wow, he's a tough one this year.
Yeah, he's just untrustworthy. He gets put in the Amir Abdullah spot of basically, I don't trust you, so what the hell am I going to do with you? I play you if I have to. If not, I'm going to look for a better option.
That's a very good way. And I got to tell you, in a PPR, I still probably lean with Duke Johnson because without the touchdowns, at least the yardage was there last week, but without the touchdowns, he's a slightly better version of Rawls and Pirine that we were just talking about.
Do you know what part of the rankings really bothers me? And I don't really know what to do with them. Number 16, 17, 18, and 19. Lamar Miller, Doug Martin, Marshawn Lynch, and Jay Ajayi. Like, screw those guys. I know you got to play them, but, like, I don't know. The range of outcomes for all four of them are just all over the map.
They are. I like Jay Ajayi more than where you have him. I feel more comfortable with him than I do with Adrian Peterson because Jay Ajayi is not going to get written out. And at least LeGarrette Blount and the performance by both of them in the last game made it clear that Ajayi needs to lead the way.
Yeah, I think so, but they're already talking about his role being expanded coming off the bye week, and now they're in Dallas. It's a very good matchup. No Sean Lee, but I don't know. If he ended up getting 35% of the touches, could be the plurality in that backfield, but then all of a sudden, Corey Clement has 10, and look, Wendell Smallwood has 4 catches this week. Like, it just seems like it could be a headache waiting to happen.
It could, but I'm still going with Ajayi. Like I just feel more comfortable with him. Doug Martin, I think that's a fair spot. I think this is a terrific matchup for him. This is look at what Jonathan Stewart just did against him. By the way, his first 100-yard game since last year. Doug Martin hasn't had a 100-yard game since 2015, so maybe this is the one where he can get his just like Stewart did last week.
I was going to say, I think it was Jonathan Stewart's first 100-yard rushing game since 1947.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Although Cameron Everett-Spain looked really good in that game in garbage time.
Oh, stop. We've done this before.
Oh, yeah. He still looked like he had a bit more explosion than Jonathan Stewart did.
No, that was just the fact of how bad the Miami Dolphins are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot about that. Wide receivers, let's get to them. It's funny because we mentioned all those guys off the top, and 2 of my favorite wide receivers are on bye this week. And it makes it really tough for my team, so let's see if we can try to work this out a little bit. Number 1, Antonio Brown. I know he ended up... Apparently the Colts are good at shutting down wide receiver ones. Went back and looked at the numbers. Like, wide receiver ones have struggled against him, which makes no sense, but here we are. Mike Evans back from suspension, number 2, Julio. Sterling Shepard, number 4. That guy is going to get double-digit targets every single week, so just play him. And he has a great down the stretch schedule as well. Doug Baldwin, AJ Green, Tyreek Hill, Adam Thielen, Michael Crabtree, Michael Thomas. If we roll into the 11 to 20 range, I then go Brandon Cooks, Golden Tate, Stefan Diggs, Parker, Landry, Keenan Allen, Larry Fitzgerald, Des Bryant, Marvin Jones, and Juju Irwin R. Shyster. The IRS, he's out there on the field, and he looks pretty good. And he played more than I thought he would with Martavis Bryant being worked back into the mix as well. So who are the guys that you want to nitpick for my top 20?
Honestly, nobody.
Okay, so we're on the same. Like it's everything's sort of consolidating at receiver. Like, how wrong were we on Marv Jones last week? That sucked.
Yeah, that was a big one. And look, the game was there for him. He got not written out. It's just Stafford wasn't going to him that game. I don't know if it's a testament to the defense, but although there's not much there to think that that was the case, he wasn't involved. He wasn't needed. And like the matchup was there. Eric Ebron, dice roll paid off if you played that. But outside of that, yeah, Marvin Jones definitely disappointed. You have to feel like that was coming after last year, though.
Yeah, do you think any of it has to do with Kenny Golladay being back and they started looking for him down the field a little bit more, and while he was out, those were just all Marvin Jones's looks?
No, just because mostly I think Kenny Golladay only played like 11 snaps, so I don't think you could really say that.
Okay. Just wondering. Like, I'm still going to play Marvin Jones this week, but like after that it gets super dicey. Like, I put Chris Hogan in the rankings. I have Chris Hogan at 23. I guess he was fully healthy. I'd have him higher than that against Oakland in Mexico, but he's still kind of banged up. I don't even know if he ends up playing this week.
I don't know either. And the one thing to go back to Marvin Jones is I don't really like that much is in Chicago. Chicago's defense has been good this year, especially at home.
Yeah, but the one thing about the Detroit offense, and I know it didn't work out this way last week, but in the previous 5 weeks it had, is that they run it through 3 guys, and those 3 guys get theirs every week, and there's something stable to that at least.
There is, and I'm not going to go crazy over it, but Marvin Jones, I definitely feel better about Smith-Schuster, Robert Woods at this point, surprisingly, Jeffrey and Cooper. I'd put him right there with Chris Hogan, honestly.
Do we think that Woods is going to be in the slot, or is he going to be on the outside against Minnesota? Because it seems like Sammy Watkins is playing a lot of slot with Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, see, I think it's just they kind of move everybody around at this point. I don't think that I'd have to go back and look at where the snap percentages are, but I think they're starting to normalize in the fact that it's 1 week it's one guy, 1 week it's another, and they're all starting to average around 30%, getting mixed into the slot. So I see where you're going with this matchup wise, but I don't know if that's the best. I think we could get hung up trying to predict that, honestly.
Sure, that's why I still have Robert Woods the highest of the Rams receivers. I don't want to say throw out the super big games that he's had the last 2 weeks, but just in terms of overall market share, he's the one with the best floor out of the bunch.
He is. He doesn't have the highest ceiling, and I still give that to Cooper Kupp because he's still second in the league, only behind Devontae Adams in red zone targets.
Yeah, so but if you're gonna score 97-yard touchdowns every week, you have the highest upside, Jake.
Fair enough, but I think that Cooper Kupp is going to still get his, and Sammy Watkins isn't going to keep producing on only 2 targets and 3 targets and 1 catches and 2 catches. I think that he's going to be the fool's gold at some point here, unless all of a sudden he starts catching and getting targeted more. I would still go Woods and Kupp first, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is the week that Kupp outdoes Woods, although I thought that was going to happen last week too.
2 guys that I feel like I may have ranked a bit too lowly, but I couldn't really figure out where to finagle them into the rankings, and I'm very willing to move them up because I kind of want to. One is Alshon Jeffrey. I have him at 22 against Dallas. The other one is Nelson Aguilar, who I have number 25 against Dallas. They should be higher, but how much higher? Where do I put them?
That's Alshon Jeffrey was one of them. And hey, on the other side of the bowl, I'd play Alshon Jeffrey over Des Bryant at this point.
Would you?
Yeah. Honestly would. I would play him over Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's in that mess of, what I always say, buy the cake, not the icing. You're trying to figure out the icing over there. And Keenan Allen would be the first one I always pick out of that crew. But, look at what he's done this year. He hasn't really done anything this entire season.
Yeah, the only thing that he was doing, at least earlier on, was just becoming basically a target magnet and piling up those receptions every single week. And I think he gets back to that against Buffalo this week. But, you would go Alshon would you go Jarvis Landry or Alshon?
I would go Jarvis Landry, then Alshon. Against Tampa Bay, I'm taking Jarvis Landry.
All right, so I'll move Alshon up to number 16.
Yeah, I like it a lot better.
All right, would you move up Aguilar then?
No, I think Nelson Aguilar's in a good spot. Although the slot definitely helps. The Cowboys have been decimated by slot receivers this year. They shut down Kupp a little bit last. Well, actually, that kind of goes to the point. Is last week the reason I liked Sanu? Sorry, I'm thinking the wrong game. The reason I liked Sanu was because of the slot last week, but that game got out of hand so quickly that they didn't really need to pass that much. Sanu still saw a little bit earlier in the game, so I still like going after the slot. I think Nelson Aguilar, though, because of the risk with him, that's a fair spot where you have him. You can't put him matchup aside ahead of somebody like Robert Woods, despite us both talking about the fact that these past 2 weeks have been pretty insane and can't continue.
The bottom end of that tier, we have 28, 29, and 30. DeAndre Hopkins, Demaryius Thomas, and Devontae Adams. I had Hopkins actually ranked inside my top 5 last week. I actually really liked the matchup, and we're talking about market share. It's still all going to him, even with Tom Savage. Now, those targets are of lesser quality than they would be with Deshaun Watson, but he's still around the league high, around 40% market share coming from Tom Savage. And it looks like Will Fuller might not play in this game, but problem is, Patrick Peterson's waiting on the other side of the ball.
And that's a fair point, but Hopkins and Thomas would both be significantly higher for me, despite the matchups.
Can't do it, man. Can't do it.
Look, here's the thing. Let me put it in perspective this way. Both of them probably getting around a dozen targets, right? Even if they only catch a third of them, 4 catches from those guys are probably going for about 60, 70 yards.
I don't even know about that. I mean, I would almost have more faith in Demaryius Thomas at this point for like a floor week. Like, I just see this being a bad week for DeAndre Hopkins.
It definitely could happen. I just, I would start him over, I'd put him at the Des Bryant level. That's how far up I would go.
You would move him up like 15 spots.
Yeah.
Wow.
Both of them.
But we saw it last week with Demaryius Thomas, but he's playing the Patriots. Like, can he backdoor his way into a good game again?
Well, 2 weeks ago, too. The one thing, as terrible as Brock is, the one good thing about Brock is he loves Demaryius Thomas. He just gives him targets week after week after week. Last week it worked out more for Emmanuel Sanders, but Demaryius Thomas still saw his. And I don't care if it's backdoor, front door, or sideways, he's going to probably get double-digit targets as long as Brock Osweiler's at quarterback.
He is. I mean, I have more faith in Cincinnati's secondary than I do in the Patriots secondary is one thing, and I don't envision a scenario where basically Cincinnati does to Denver what New England does and just get up by a bunch of points, then play like prevent defense the rest of the game either. I just think the matchup and game flow overall are just tougher on the Denver receivers this time around. That if you do nothing early in the game, I don't know if there's going to be a backdoor to scrape up those fantasy points in the fourth quarter.
Well, that's fair, but let's also go back to I don't want to cherry pick somebody we didn't talk about here, and I hate to do this, Steve. It almost feels like we were like, "Oh, gotcha."
No, let's do it.
I feel the same way about Devontae Parker. All of his production this year has been in the fourth quarter and garbage time. All of it. He's eclipsed the other 3 quarters combined this season, just if you take his fourth quarter play. So I think that's kind of a similar comparison. The situation here is it doesn't even need to be garbage time for these guys. It's just more volume. With Devontae Parker, as we just saw last night from the Monday Night Football game, if anybody's watching this after Tuesday, which they should be, look at the fact there is he didn't get his garbage touchdown. It went to Jarvis Landry. He didn't get his garbage time. It was a decent game, but he's a garbage time player.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one reason that I have Devontae Parker up so highly this week is just I really like this matchup against Tampa.
Oh, it is a terrific matchup.
And he might not even need the garbage time to get going. But I'm thinking with Demaryius Thomas that he might need that in order to get his value back. And I don't, at least with Parker, I can envision a route to a lot of upside this week. I don't see that with Hopkins, and I don't see that with Adams, and I don't see that with Demaryius Thomas. Although Brock Hundley looked a little bit better on Sunday.
Yeah, he definitely did. A little bit. But, I mean, again, this is similar to Jared Goff last year coming into this season. It's easy to look better than the worst.
This is true, but, I mean, I have far more faith in Devontae Adams producing a decent fantasy stat line than I do Jordy Nelson.
Oh, 100%. But there's a perfect example. Go with Devontae Adams, too. All 3 of them. They're getting double-digit targets per game. When you're the number one and you're just going to be fed that much, in a matchup or not, this kind of goes to the Mike Evans thing earlier this year and Odell Beckham's and all the time in the world. It's it's terrible matchups, but how mad are you going to be if you start 3 people in front of them and they, don't see that coverage for 2 or 3 plays? And because it's going to happen. Patrick Peterson's not going to be 100% snaps on DeAndre Hopkins. That's just, teams are too smart for that to happen. So if he can break away for just 5, all it's going to take is 1.
You really think Houston's that smart?
No, I think DeAndre Hopkins is that smart.
Potentially. I don't know. I'm counting on this being a bust week here, and I'm wrong a lot.
That's fine. I like that you're sticking to your guns.
31 to 40 range. I owe Macklin Crowder. Crowder's my highest of the Redskins receivers this week, as I kind of pointed out off the top that he's going to draw the slot. That should be an easier matchup for him against New Orleans. And I do think there's going to be scoring in that game, so I like Crowder a bit here. Rashard Matthews, Amendola, he would go up if Chris Hogan was out. Not a ton up, but a little bit up. Cooper Kupp, Mohamed Sanu, Sammy Watkins, Corey Davis, Emmanuel Sanders, Kenny Galladay. Then you're into your Djax, Doxson, Calvin Benjamin, who reeks. Bruce Ellington, because it looks like Will Fuller's not going to play.
It does look like it, although similar to what I said to go back to the way you were promoting before the waiver column is, speaking of trusting this team, you want to trust Tom Savage to be able to make a second receiver valuable?
I mean, if there's a matchup to do it in, it's against Arizona.
Yeah, but I just, no, I can't do it. I can't. You can't tell me week 11 of the season I can't be putting Bruce Ellington into my lineup.
Hey, listen, I'll tell you this much. I would play Bruce Ellington over Jordy Nelson.
Okay, well, that's fair.
I have Jordy Nelson number 40.
Jordy Nelson's droppable. I mean, that's the fact of the matter.
That's so sad.
It's really sad, but to go back to earlier this season is something I said as soon as the Aaron Rodgers situation happened, is people didn't realize Jordy Nelson was more touchdown reliant than Devontae Adams. For all the complaints about Adams not being able to do what he did last year, it was Nelson that had 6 touchdowns in the first 4 games without topping 70 yards. He was touchdown reliant even before Aaron Rodgers got hurt.
Let's talk about 2 guys that are potentially making their comeback this week. One is DD Westbrook. I have him ranked at number 55. One is Corey Coleman, coming back off IR on that hand injury. I have him ranked at number 56. I don't have a whole lot of faith in either of them. Right out of the shoe, I mean, Corey Coleman has a really disastrous matchup against Jacksonville. So that's not really all that good. But what do you project for Westbrook this week in terms of snap count? Because it looks like Allen Hurns is going to sit.
It does look like he's going to sit, but they have other options in this wide receiver game. None of them are as talented as DD Westbrook, but to be missing this much time and to have setbacks where, you were supposed to play 2 weeks ago and then last week, and then it keeps getting pushed back, and then there was actually conversations last week that they couldn't get him out this week because I think there's some timetable where if he wasn't out there this week, or it was either this week or next week, where if he wasn't out there, they had to keep him on the IR for the rest of the season. They were actually considering that. I can't see him getting a high percentage. Like, I can't see 70% of the snaps. So if he's in the 40 to 50% range, you're just looking at a boom or bust play. The talent is there. You saw it on display in the preseason. But are you talking about coming off and basically being his first – actually, it is his first game this season in the regular season and having these setbacks? I don't think you can trust him in your lineup. And same thing with Corey Coleman, but for a different reason. I would trust – if you gave me 2 of them against the same matchup, I would take Coleman 10 times out of 10 because his was a hand issue, and he showed that he's a great receiver already. So it's the matchup, which is a problem, and that is Westbrook's snap count, which are concerns for both of them are concerns for me, that facet.
If they were both available to pick up, which one would you pick up?
Coleman
for sure?
Yeah, he'll be the number 1 in his offense, and he's already proven his talent. DD Westbrook is all speculation talent. We've seen a lot of people before. I agree. Look, I am one of the people that will say DD Westbrook has the most potential talent on that team outside of Allen Robinson when it comes to wide receivers. He has to do it. He's done it in the preseason. How many times have we seen somebody do something in the preseason and never show up again for the rest of their lives? So let's chill out a little bit. And Coleman's at least been on the field and proven that he can do it with crap quarterback play. So I don't need to know who the quarterback is for the Browns to know that I would take Coleman 100% of the time. But real quick to go back to the other one from earlier that I was kind of previewing, I think John Brown's an interesting sleeper if Blaine Gabbert's at quarterback.
How come?
Because Drew Stanton throws to only Fitzgerald, and then Fitzgerald some more. At least Gabbert spreads it around. And if you look at this matchup, as you know, you just need a big play in this matchup to get behind the defense. And John Brown has that potential. It could be J.J. Nelson.
That's the thing. Why John Brown over Nelson or even Jaron Brown?
Snaps and most pure talent.
Okay. So should I move John Brown up from 58?
No. I just think that if you're, I would play him over Westbrook or Coleman for coming back for their first games, and then also the matchup for Coleman. But this is a fair range for him because all these guys are kind of like Kenny Stills could end up, popping off in that matchup because the Buccaneers defense is miserable. John Brown is in the conversation of huge boom, but the floor is literally a 0.
Okay, let's move to quarterback, sorry. I go Tom Brady, number 1. People didn't like my ranking of Tom Brady number 1 last week, and although Cam should have been number 1, but Brady turned out a pretty good game against the Broncos, and apparently the Broncos defense, not what it was cracked up to be. So Brady's 1, Carson Wentz against Dallas is number 2, then Alex Smith, Derek Carr against the Patriots in Mexico, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Phillip Rivers, and Ben Roethlisberger, followed by Drew Brees at number 11. Even that kind of feels too high at this point, but it seems like almost everyone there's a consensus that, we've all been ranking Drew Brees too highly, and you've been way ahead of this one because you've been yelling at me for like 3 weeks now that I have him ranked way too highly. Turns out you were right. I feel like this might be a shootout though against Washington.
It definitely has the potential, although on both sides of the ball, there's actually some tough matchups to be concerned about. So it could go either way. Here's the thing. I'll give credit where credit's due. Heath Cummings of CBS tweeted out yesterday. He said that Drew Brees is averaging 33 attempts per game. He hasn't averaged less than 40 since 2009. Guess what they did in 2009? Just go to the Super Bowl and win it in 2010.
Huh. So you're putting your money on the Saints?
No, I'm just putting money on the Saints not changing what they're doing, and that's run the ball, have some balance, and Drew Brees could have multiple weeks like he just did last week of throwing 0 touchdowns.
Do you worry that the Goff train is out of control here against Minnesota and might come to a crashing halt?
No, that's actually he was one of the ones I was looking at as ranked too high in Minnesota. I will 100% admit, everybody knows this out there, I was one of the biggest Jared Goff's haters in the world, and that's why I'm giving so much credit to Sean McVay. If you ended the season right now, heck, they could go 500 for the rest of the way. Sean McVay is the coach of the year, in my opinion, for not just what he's done to this team and what he's turned it around in one season of Jeff Fisher's destroyed this team, is what he's done with Jared Goff as well. Because Jared Goff was literally one of the worst quarterback performances in a decade last season, and that's why I hated him so much. He's done so much for this team. At the same time, if you look at the game schedule, if you look at what he's done against some tougher opponents thus far, including Seattle, which the Vikings defense is up there on par with the Seattle defense, it hasn't been very good. So I would have him lower in this game.
The weird thing is, I mean, I don't have the most faith in Jared Goff, but in that same league that I was telling you about the receivers, I have Jared Goff as my quarterback. I picked him up weeks ago. I've just been playing him every week, and even in the rankings, I just keep putting him high in the rankings every week, and every week it works out. Like, I want to keep running with this.
I don't have a problem. Look, especially if you picked him up, I don't have a problem. Keep running with him. But as much as I hate Ben Roethlisberger's road splits, he's at home for the next 5 games.
Yeah, but how about this? How about Ben Roethlisberger just isn't very good?
Oh no, that's a fact. There's no disputing that at all. But Ben Roethlisberger, something flips and he becomes just average quarterback to pretty damn good at home. So he's at home against an exploitable defense in the Titans. I would play him. I would play Ben Roethlisberger before to play. If I had Jared Goff and Ben Roethlisberger on the same team this week, just purely on matchups, I would go with Ben Roethlisberger.
Nah, I would stick with Goff. I feel like if I needed 10 points, I would play Ben Roethlisberger. If I was shooting for any sort of upside, then I would go with Jared Goff. It could turn out worse, but I mean, at least they score like 35 points a game. Just get a piece of it. You talk about like getting the whole cake instead of a few crumbs. I mean, Jared Goff has been that guy this year.
Big Ben's looked like he's ate the full cake and then some crumbs.
Well, listen, when you've won 2 Super Bowls and you've made that much money, you can have 2 cakes.
Is it going to be any surprise if he retires and all of a sudden, like 2 years later, he's the size of Rex Ryan?
No, but maybe he'll get the Rex Ryan surgery and everything will be okay.
I'll have to find out if he likes feet.
Yeah, we will have to find that out. I'm sure we will. I'm sure that will eventually come out. This stuff doesn't go over our heads anymore. Eli Manning, I have ranked at number 14. Do you think that's too low?
No. If anything, I think that's right on par. Actually, yeah, no, one spot. I would put him over Case Keenum, given the matchup. I think Eli Manning, for everything that's going wrong with the Giants this year, Eli Manning's not to blame. He's actually been pretty good on the touchdown to interception ratio. That turnover where he just rolled the ball forward, I don't know what that was about, and nobody does. But that's why Eli Manning's Eli Manning. But for whatever is going wrong this year, with what he's lost at wide receiver and still been able to do, he's been putting up double-digit games. He's putting up 20-plus points in 5 games so far this season, including 2 30-pointers, and I know those are back with Odell Beckham, but he still has the potential, and this is a terrific matchup for him. I think this is a good spot. Like I said, I would feel more comfortable than Case Keenum with Eli Manning.
Case Keenum's another guy. You just kind of keep rolling him out there, and he keeps putting up fantasy points. Like, sure, the Rams have a good...
Mm-hmm.
They
Not all the time, though.
Most of the time. More so than Eli.
Most of the time.
He's been more consistent than Eli has.
He has been, but here's my problem: is it's a tougher matchup. Actually, much tougher. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum here. And the other problem is they were already planning, which just makes no sense to me, that you're a playoff team, you're winning with Case Keenum, you don't upset the apple cart, to use the cliche, and Teddy Bridgewater hasn't played since 2015. You don't know what kind of rapport he has with Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen at this point. You don't know what kind of quarterback he's going to be. He struggles with the deep ball. He played 16 games through the same amount of touchdowns as he did as a rookie. All those things, and they were still saying, we were probably going to go with Teddy Bridgewater in Week 11, and then Case Keenum played out of his mind. If Case Keenum comes out and throws 2 picks and has 60 yards heading into halftime, I'm just so scared that this team is going to be stupid and come out and all of a sudden Teddy Bridgewater's in the second half.
I mean, that's very reasonable. That was sort of my case against him last week, and then it didn't happen. I was like, yeah, damn it.
Right.
This sucks. But here's the thing, though. Here's why they're considering Teddy Bridgewater. Because envision a scenario. It was a lot like Alex Smith with the 49ers. When it comes to January, and you see Minnesota Vikings win the Super Bowl, at home, too, if that happens this year, who's the quarterback of the team? I can assure you it's not Case Keenum.
And that should be true. And then if it is, he's going to end up getting like a Joe Flacco contract.
Hey, listen, he hasn't been bad. Maybe it just turns out that everyone who played for the Rams was just in the worst spot ever.
I think that's definitely something we need to take away from it is that, hey, maybe Jeff Fisher is one of the worst coaches in the history of football.
Is Marvin Lewis the new Jeff Fisher?
He's in the conversation.
All right, let's move to tight ends. I have Travis Kelce at number 1 playing the Giants. Would there be any more just desserts than Travis Kelce having a bad week?
You know what? Sunday afternoon, you can go look at my tweet. As soon as the Garrett Selleck thing happened, I said, guess who they have next week? Travis Kelce. Watch Travis Kelce go 4 for 40 with no touchdown.
Like, it almost seems like it's setting up for that. Because, you know, like, DraftKings-wise, everyone's going to own him. As they probably should. And he's going to be super pricey, but it's almost like, who cares? He's definitely going to score a touchdown.
Honestly, he's not even that pricey for when you consider he's Travis Kelce and you consider this matchup.
So I go Kelce, then I go Gronk, Ingram, Ertz, Jimmy Graham, Kyle Rudolph, Delaney Walker, Vernon Davis, Cameron Brate, and Tyler Kroft at number 10. I actually have Jordan Reed out of my rankings again because God knows when that guy's going to play.
Yeah, I have no idea either. I like the Tyler Kroft. He's actually you're calling out all my sleepers. You're going to have nothing left for my column tonight.
Now listen, Tyler Kroft, he didn't have a good week last week, but he was still seeing a decent percentage of that market share. My problem with the Bengals right now is they just don't run a lot of plays.
No, and you know the funny thing here is a lot like look, he's touchdown dependent, but he's less touchdown dependent than what I see a lot of people wanting to talk about this week, and that's Mercedes Lewis because he's facing the Browns. Look at the fact Mercedes Lewis has multiple games with 0 catches. He has 1 game with more than 3. At least Tyler Kroft has a handful of games where he's caught more than 3 passes and being able to put up 40, 50 yards and not completely kill you.
Yeah, let's also not pretend like Denver's all some elite defense against tight ends. They're actually, besides the Giants, the worst against tight ends. And the Browns are too, granted. But like over the past 4 weeks, the Giants are giving up over 13 fantasy points to tight ends. The Broncos are giving up over 12, and the Browns are giving up over 10. Like, pick your poison. I'll take the guy who at least sees 5 targets a game.
And that was exactly my point when I was talking about it. I kind of just gave you most of the write-up for Tyler Kroft.
Okay, perfect. See, any other tight ends that you think that we should be considering? Like, I was kind of bummed out Charles Clay didn't come back to what he was doing earlier in the season, but I could see him rebounding here.
I could definitely see him rebounding. Like the question was how healthy he was, and there was a question the entire week of if he was even going to play. So I think that another week, and now that he's back, getting closer to 100%, he's intriguing. I think C.J. Fedorowicz, same boat, is the fact that he wasn't 100% first game back.
Saw a lot of targets.
What was that?
He saw a lot of targets last week.
And that's the appeal here, is that the fact is he's always seeing targets in this offense. And if you want to talk about, like, to me personally, with Tom Savage at quarterback in this offense, Fedorowicz is the number 2, not Bruce Ellington.
I think that they might.
Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne. No, if it's Bruce Wayne, you definitely have to play him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Ben Watson's going to have his PPR base. Austin Hooper's good 1 every 3 weeks and could swing a week for you, but...
I want to ask you a question.
Okay, hit me.
If Jordan Reed suits up, do you play him?
No.
That's how I feel.
Like, I mean, obviously it would affect Vernon Davis's ranking, because I have Vernon Davis at number 8 right now. He'd probably drop down to like 13 or 14, but I'd probably still play Vernon Davis over Jordan Reed.
Yeah, I'm looking at the rankings right now. Jordan Reed or Mercedes Lewis?
I'd
Jordan. Go Reed.
I would play Reed too. Listen, if this turns out to be the Mercedes Lewis week, so be it. I don't want any part of that.
Well, I'm looking at the rankings because I just think that if Jordan Reed happens to suit up, I think that's a fair spot to put him at, is with Jason Witten.
I think I'd play him over Jason Witten. I'd play him behind Fedorowicz, probably. I'd probably have him at 17.
Yeah, I could see over Gresham too. Gresham, he's kind of the same. It's the same boat of Reed. You could go get a decent game or complete nothing.
Yeah, I mean, at least with crappy quarterbacks in the game, they might just look for the tight end.
Has anybody ever asked you what that present? I know you have a link to it, but I just love that you have that there for Jermaine Gresham.
You know what? It's one of my favorite ones, but no one's ever brought it up to me. I think people just see Jermaine present. And they know what it is. They just move on.
I watched that show on TBS or whatever, the one where they're lost on the island, mostly just because of him.
Really?
Yeah. Have you seen it? It's
yeah, the one where they're the fake Lost show.
Yeah. Rhys Darby, man, he makes that show.
Yeah, I watched like the first 4 episodes and I forgot it existed.
That's fair. It's gone through 2 seasons, so you missed a lot.
Oh wow. All right. Defenses to close this out. Weird week for D's. I go Jacksonville, the Ravens, Chargers. I almost said the Clippers, but I said it right this time. The Chargers, the Bears, Steelers, Lions, Chiefs, Broncos, Cardinals, and then Rams. That's what's going to go for me. How about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar range. I have a few that are off just a little bit. I think the Lions are intriguing. Like, even in Chicago, I know I mentioned how good the Bears defense has been playing. You brought them up last week as well. I think they're an intriguing, like, you're going to be able to find them on the waiver wire type of play, because most of the other ones, you look at this entire list, and most of these defenses are owned.
Yeah, you might be able to sneak the Ravens through because they didn't play last week and people may have dropped them.
Right.
And I think they're
I saw that one.
I think they're an elite play against Green Bay.
I definitely, yep, top 5, no question about it. I think the Bengals might be sitting out there to play at Denver. I think that's a sneaky one.
Yeah, the Chargers could be available too. People may have played them last week against Jacksonville, but on the whole, they haven't really been owned that much throughout the course of the season.
Like preparation age.
Yes, exactly. But defenses are really weird like that. Like, they're the one thing where ownership percentages don't really dictate where they might be available in people's leagues, because people are really fickle. Either people are really stringent with defenses and they hold them through bye weeks, or other people are just kind of like, screw it, I'll drop and pick up someone else.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing, too. There was a couple leagues I was in where Jacksonville, and this was a while ago, before they were starting to cement themselves as elite, but I had a couple leagues where I picked up the Jaguars defense on their bye because people dropped them.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts, but I understand that move, weirdly enough. I mean, it sucks in retrospect, but I get why people would do it.
Yeah. It's like holding on to kickers.
Yeah. See, I would never do it.
Because you don't play in kicker leagues.
I play in one kicker league, actually. I found that out.
I accidentally joined one only because I told Jamie that I would play in a stupid IDP league and not knowing that was part of it.
Hey, at least you play in one more IDP league than I do. I can't even wrap my mind around
I actually play in 2.
That's too much for me. Too much knowing.
And the worst part is like any given week you can lose like 200 to 130. It's so weird.
All right, Jake Ciely, check him out on Twitter at AllInKid, up on RotoExperts.com, the Fantasy Sports Network, and the Fantasy Radio app. Jake, tell everyone when On Target, the award-winning On Target, is on.
It is on 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Good times, yeah, with myself, your boy Chris Meany, and Joe Pizzapia every single day, having some fun over there, making lists like we always do.
You're making lists? You like Tim Andercuss style lists?
No. We do. We've been doing this since about week 1 or 2 of the season, where we're not even started in the preseason. Like Chris Jericho is like, you know what we do when we don't know where to rank this guy? You know what we do when we don't know his value for the rest of the season? We make a list!
See, you need to just be ranking weird stuff and get people really upset. That seems to have Twitter attraction.
I know. I saw his fast foods one before, and that was the most absurd thing ever.
Hey, listen, every single one of those lists is basically the most absurd thing that you'll ever see.
It is. And then I saw you retweet the nutball who's trying to steal his shtick and also considers IHOP a fast food restaurant.
Yeah, well, listen, people can call fast food what they want. I don't really care.
No, you have to have a drive-through.
You have to have a drive-through?
Or at least the walk up to the counter and walk out. You don't, put it this way, you don't sit at a table and wait for somebody to bring you your food.
It's pretty good. That's actually a really good distinction between fast food and non-fast food. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah. Because if you go to, I consider Moe's is kind of pretty much fast food, Tex-Mex, but you go up there, you order your food, and you take it with you and go sit down and eat. You're not waiting for somebody to come bring it to you.
I thought you meant like Moe's Tavern or Uncle Moe's Family Feed Bag.
No, that'd be good. I still want to go check out the Simpsons Park, and where were they? Universal Studios? I would do that. Have you gone? You should go.
I haven't been I've only ever been to Universal Studios once. I'm pretty sure that was like 20 years ago.
No, but that's your thing, Simpsons, man.
It is, but I think I'll just do my Simpsons. I don't need to go anywhere and do Simpsons stuff. I can just look at stuff online.
All right, fair enough.
Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter. Check out my updated rankings up on DKPlaybook.com and download the audio version of the Pat Mayo Experience on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play for the video version up on the Draftkings YouTube page. Pat Mayo, good luck in Week 11. I'll see you next time.